This could have been my first ever Zwift win, but one decision undid it all. Let's get into it. First up, a wee bit of background. In my recent Zwift races, I've been sort of honing in on my first elusive win. I've been training hard, my power numbers have been going up, and I'm now, I would say, towards the sharper end of the category C field on Zwift. What this all means is that I now have the capability not just to sort of sit at the front, but to actively make decisions about the race and how I want to approach things. Whereas in the past, I've just been sort of holding on for dear life. Our course for this race is one I've done before. It's the Break, Fast, Crits and Grits circuit on the Scotland map. This course is sort of divided into 3 chunks, I would say. It starts off fiery. There's a climb which will immediately thin the herd. And obviously I want to be in the front group for that climb. There's then a kind of rolling middle sector which makes up the bulk of the race, and the final firework is a climb up to the finish line, which basically is where all hell will break loose. I was aware there was a possibility for a breakaway. This final climb isn't too long, but it's only 3% or so on average, and it's pretty draftable. The speed is quite high all the way to the top. So I wasn't deciding that I would definitely go in a breakaway, and I certainly wasn't planning to attack off the front. But if a breakaway was forming and it looked strong, maybe it would make sense to jump across into there and get myself a bit of a head start on the final climb. So here we are at the race start, and as I mentioned, climb 1 starts almost immediately and it quickly thins the herd. Just try and stay relaxed for the start and try and keep it together up this climb. I've been caught out here before. In my last race, I was not positioned well and I basically got dropped pretty much on the first climb. So for this time around, I wanted to be right at the very front and piling on the power the whole way through. It feels bad to be going this deep, this early in a race, but you need to stay at the front because if you get dropped, you'll just never make it back to the front and you might as well call it race over. As we join the action now, you can see we're just coming over the crest of the hill and there's already been a split further back in the group. If you find yourself on the wrong side of the split, that's basically any chances of winning the race over for you. Closing the gap across to the front group is so difficult, it's basically impossible unless you have, like a team to work with, but most people don't. So even though it feels bad to be putting on so much power so early in a race, it's absolutely necessary to remain competitive for the remainder of the race. I was pretty pleased with how this climb went off, to be honest. As I mentioned in the past, I've been dropped on this first climb before, so being able to stay with the front runners and remain competitive for the remainder of the race at least shows there's been some jump in my performance. So that's the first major obstacle out the way. Last time I did this course, I was dropped by now, so feeling good so far. It was a bit of an effort over the climb, but it's quite short and managed, so all good. Now we're over the first big obstacle, that big climb, and we're into the kind of bulk of the race. And to be honest, I'm going to skip most of this because it's just kind of hanging on. There's a few surges in pace, especially on smaller climbs and things like that, but nothing really to report here. Seem to have settled down a bit, not quite so fast and furious anymore. There was also a couple of attacks off the front, but they were pretty half-hearted, they didn't really stick. I don't even know if these were really proper attacks or if they were just people that sort of overshot the front of the group and rolled off by accident, because they were either quickly reeled in or they eased off the power and just came back, so nothing much to report there. One thing I will say, and it's maybe a bit of a design flaw with Zwift UI, I'd be interested to see if anyone else has found this. If you're on a circuit and you have people off the front, you also have back markers to contend with, and it gets really confusing who's a back marker that your group is catching up to and who is actually off the front of your group. I'll show an example on the screen just now. It's a little bit confusing to work out, and it kind of makes it hard to know if you've reeled in an attacker or if you're just passing a back marker, which then makes it difficult to know what you should do tactically. Anyway, regardless of this, towards the end of the rolling section, there was a small break that got away and it got up the road, 2 or 3 riders. I didn't feel I had the legs to follow, but in truth, what I should really have done is be more careful with my positioning here. I knew that any successful breakaway attempt was going to come towards the end of the rolling section, most likely. So I should have been positioned nearer the front so that I could respond and get across into any of those breakaway groups. Yes, it would have been a bit of a gamble to spend so much energy so early, especially with that final climb coming, but the option was kind of taken away from me just by my own bad positioning. Even though it was quite a small group, I should have really been a bit keener and a bit more on the front and a bit more responsive. I still thought this small break would get reeled in before the climb, or possibly get reeled in on the climb.
So we got a couple off the front. I don't think I have the legs to go with them, so I'm hoping we just reel them back in.
But as you'll see, this kind of slight lapse of attention and lapse of judgment is basically what ultimately cost me the race. So now you can see we're getting onto the final climb, and this is where the rubber really meets the road. This is where things get tough, and any energy that I saved in the pack needed to be basically let out the gate right now to ascend this final climb as quickly as possible. Of course, there was the 2 or 3 riders who had broken away earlier on and were further up the road. My game plan here is that any energy that I've saved by being in the pack, it needs to be let out now so that I can close them in, and hopefully they're on slightly more tired legs, given that they've already been up the road and will have had to be working harder as part of a small group. As you can see, my performance on this climb is actually much stronger than I thought it would be. In races past, climbing's been my kind of downfall. I've been unable to hold on climbs, and I've certainly not been able to attack on climbs. But now that we're getting towards the front end of the Cat C field, you can see that I actually did really well on this climb, if I say so myself. You know, I started with the pack at the bottom. We kind of managed to weasel our way away, and then we started reeling in that breakaway at the front. Now, I was giving it absolutely everything that I had. I was positioned really well for my final sprint, and basically for the last few hundred meters, I let out absolutely everything I had to try and reel in those guys that had got up the road earlier. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be, and I came in possibly the most frustrating position you can in a race, P4. Why is it the most frustrating? Because you're one off of the podium. So yeah, it was so close. And I mean, the gap between me and the guy that came third was minuscule. Now, when I first crossed the line, I was pretty annoyed about how the end of this race had played out. And I kind of felt, had I gone with the breakaway, maybe I would have been able to beat them up the final climb, and maybe that would be my first ever Zwift win in the bag. However, what is pleasing is when you see the breakdown of power at the very end, the watts per kilo for me and the guys that won the race is basically the same. I do have enough power output to win one of these races. It's now more sort of getting lucky and being tactical in the right ways. It's really fun to be at the sharp end of these races and have these decisions to make. I know this will all go away once we move up into Cat B, but at the moment in Cat C, I am enjoying the races. They're still tough, but you know, at least you have a shot of winning, and you can kind of choose when to use your power rather than just trying to react to everybody else. So let's talk about how we're going to do things going forward. Well, in the next race, my plan is to be much more combative. I'm going to commit basically to launching an attack not at the very end of whatever the next race is. In races gone past, my strategy has always been to sit in and then do, you know, my best sprint at the very end and try and clean up as many places as I can. But now we've got a bit more sustained power and a few more tactical options. I'm just going to commit, even if it's just for learning purposes, to launching an attack off the front at some point during the race. This may bring me out in a net negative position. I may do worse than if I just sat in and sprinted, but I think it's important to get some experience attacking like this. And you never know, maybe something a bit more unorthodox and a bit more creative might lead to that elusive first win that I have been chasing down now for months. If you would like to see how I get on in that race, please do remember to subscribe down below. You know where the button is. We don't just cover Zwift races on this channel, but also real world cycling events, training, gear, all sorts of different things. If that sounds good to you, we'd love to have you along for the ride. Please do hit subscribe down below. Otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thank you.